Hi, and welcome to It's Just Racing, hosted by Jim and Jim. I'm Jim,
And I'm Jim.
and we're here to talk about racing. Now, a little housekeeping, a couple things I forgot in last week's show. We had a Facebook survey up for you, the listeners and viewers, to pick who you thought would win the NASCAR championship this year. Um, it was really a runaway. Kyle Larson got 45% of the votes. So just about half of all of our listeners chose Kyle Larson. Christopher Bell, who's having a heck of a year, he came in second at 18%. So everybody else got one or two votes. One guy voted for himself, but that's okay.
He's ahead of Chase Briscoe, I think. Still.
He is, yes. Even the guy who isn't racing, he is ahead of Chase Briscoe. Another thing, more local, but it is also national news. Slinger Super Speedway in Slinger, Wisconsin, is the world's fastest quarter-mile paved oval. Is being sold. Don't worry, it's still going to be a racetrack. You can still race it in real life and on iRacing. It is being sold to another local racing family, so it is guaranteed to stay in business as a racetrack. No development, no nothing like that. So that's good to see a track changing hands and not being turned into condominiums.
Now remind me, did you ever race at Slinger?
I never did. No, that is my one regret in my racing life, that I never raced at Slinger Super Speedway 7 minutes from my house. This week, we put an Indy champion survey up on Facebook. This was closer. There's two drivers that are the clear favorites in Facebook land. Joseph Newgarden got 42% of the votes, and Scott McLaughlin got 31%. Now, if I recall, those were our two picks, weren't they?
They were. And if you combine that, I guess Penske's got a 73% confidence vote. So
I guess.
both strong cars.
And that and $7 will get you a cup of coffee at Starbucks, right? All right. Let's talk about Supercross, because that's how I like to always start the show. Supercross went back across the country again, and they were in Daytona. I've never been a fan of this track. It's too long. I always complain it's not technical enough. The racing is boring. It's just not my cup of tea. They don't use clay. They have topsoil. I don't know if there's not clay in Florida, but it's black dirt and sand. So, I don't know. I've never been a fan of Daytona. What do you think?
I mean, you'll have to take that up with Ricky Carmichael. Get him to design a track better for you. But
It's just the straightaways are so long. I don't know. I've always had a problem with this track, so I was not looking forward to this week's Supercross. But anyway, we are back on the East Coast, so it's the 250 East. The heats were won by Tom Viel and RJ Hampshire. 450 heats. Ken Roczen won the first one. And, well, I'm not going to tell you who won the second one yet, because Chase Sexton got the whole shot, and he took the lead. What'd he do?
I don't even want to guess at this point. It's just too much of a pattern.
Chase Sexton crashed himself out of the lead. Didn't even finish the first lap.
Somebody's got to have a counter up of how many times he's done this.
This poor kid. Anyway, Malcolm Stewart won the second heat race. Of note, I was surprised to see Cody Schock. It's like, what is Cody Schock doing here? He's a 250 West Coast rider, and he must have had nothing else to do this week, so he drove across the country and raced his 250 bike in the 450 class. Actually ended up finishing 5th in the heat race, transferring directly to the main.
You know, that's pretty impressive.
It is. I mean, the bikes are lighter, but on this type of track, I didn't think that was going to work for him. But it did. On to the last chance qualifiers in the 250s. Jack Chambers and 450, of course, Chase Sexton, who shouldn't have been in the 450, except he can't remember how to ride most of the time. Anyhow, Chase Sexton won it. 250 main event rolled around, and notably absent was Cameron McAdoo. He had transferred in through the heat and pulled out of the main, and no one knew why. Found out later. He's been racing on a torn ACL. His knee got worse after the heat. It was swollen. He couldn't walk. He's done for the year. He's finally decided to break down and have surgery. So Cameron McAdoo done for the season. 250 main starts. Good race. Levi Kitchen, big crash, running in third. It hurt every time they showed the replay.
And it looked bad. That was one of the worst crashes we've seen in a few years.
I was actually calling for a red flag, even though he was off the track. It was a rough one. It looked worse than it ended up being, and it ended up being pretty bad. Levi broke a collarbone and also broke 2 vertebrae in his back. So he's also done for the year. It was rough to see. He was doing pretty good this season. So Levi Kitchen and Cameron McAdoo are both done and out of the 250 East. Rest of the race was pretty uneventful. RJ Hampshire won, Tom Vial second, and Seth Hamaker third. For the 250 East points, Max Anstey, with a 6th place, was able to hold on to his lead. Tom Vial is 6 points behind him, followed by Chance Hymas, RJ Hampshire, and Nate Thrasher. 450 main. I didn't take a lot of notes because it was just a fun race to watch. I didn't want to spend time trying to write this down and that down. El Hombre, Jason Anderson, he had the whole shot and he led. Him and Ken Roxon, Cooper Webb, Aaron Plessinger was up there for a while. And this was probably the best race of the year, and that's why I had to say all the bad stuff that I didn't like about Daytona, because the Daytona race ended up being the best race of the year in my mind so far.
It was a pretty great race. I'm glad you came around to enjoy it.
But yeah, Ken Roxon won it, Cooper Webb second, Aaron Plessinger third. I've never seen someone so happy to finish third place in my life. I love that guy's energy. He's a blast. So the points for the 450s, Cooper Webb is your points leader. Chase Sexton somehow manages to stay in the hunt. He's only 10 points back. Ken Roxon 16 back. Everybody else is over 40 points behind, so they're irrelevant at this point.
No, it doesn't seem that close, but I mean, if Ken Roxon wouldn't have had that bad luck a couple weeks back with the chain falling off, I mean, he'd be in the lead by 1 or 2 points. So he's still in this. He's got momentum. He's riding well. So I think this is still going to be a good battle to the finish.
I think it will stay a 3-bike battle, so should be a good rest of the season. They are at Lucas Oil Stadium this week, right in the middle of the country, so it's going to be the first East-West showdown. So the best from the East 250s and the best from the West 250s. Most of the East are injured and out for the season, so I think the West is definitely going to have the advantage for the night, but they will be doing that this weekend in Supercross.
On Friday, we had the 1812 of Qatar. I wasn't able to watch most of it. It started at like 5 in the morning, our local time. But it was a pretty good race. I caught the highlights, watched about the last hour, on the timing and scoring. Ferrari had a nice live stream of their in-car cameras, so that was appreciated. The Ferraris, they were very fast. They ended up finishing first, second, and third overall for the sweep. All 3 cars, they just looked fantastic.
Most Ferraris do look fantastic, don't they?
They do. They look even better when they're in victory lane.
I suppose.
Cadillac, they led early on. They were running 1-2. They had a really embarrassing moment. There was a safety car restart.
Oh, I
And
saw that.
yeah, the first place kind of like it went a little early and then braked hard, and the second place, I guess, either didn't know they were doing that or just didn't have time to react and just drove straight into the back of them, both of them with damage. I think they both finished off the lead lap. It was not a great look for the team. You never like to see that happen. But anyways, the other some of the other cars, the Valkyrie, I was really excited for. We don't have to laugh at
Martin, that was impressive.
We don't have to laugh at them. It was bad enough as it was. They were really slow. They looked to be about 2 seconds a lap off the pace. They probably would be competitive against LMP2s. Hopefully, it's just because it was the first race, and the drivers didn't have a lot of experience in the car. But
they opened the door.
Well, yeah, if the door would have closed, that would have helped. They couldn't close the door, and then it flew off. That was a whole thing.
Oh, that was great. Great debut for Aston Martin.
So, one of the Valkyries DNF'd. It was the only hypercar to DNF. It was actually quite impressive. You had 17 of the 18 starters finish a 10-hour race. But the other one was 23 laps down. So
is that the one that lost the door, or did the one that lost the door continue on?
I'm not sure which one. I think the one that lost the door continued on.
I suppose if you're battling for last, we don't really have to pay attention.
Yeah. Surprisingly, the Porsche, which just last month won Daytona, just had no pace at all. The best Porsche was like 10th place, fighting with like the Peugeots and Alpines.
Wow, when you're fighting with French cars, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what happened, if it was just not set up for the track or the heat or something. But that was very surprising to me. Now BMW, they had good pace in qualifying. They put a car on the front row. The Ferraris were just too fast for them in the race. Dries Vanthoor, he had a really late charge. He cut, I think, 25 seconds off of the lead in his last 2 stints. He passed to the teammate BMW and both Toyotas. But in the end, the Ferrari pace was just too much, and they ran away with it. You had a good battle in the closing laps for P2. Alessandro Pierguidi, he was catching Robert Kubica. Kubica had a really good defense, and he held on for second place. But it was the Ferrari of Antonio Fuoco, Miguel Molina, and Nicholas Nielsen who ended up winning. And over in the GT side, it was a good old American car.
All right.
Yeah, the yellow Corvette winning. That was driven by Daniel Juncadella, Johnny Edgar, and Ben Keating.
Ben Keating, the old guy, wins again. All right, on to the Xfinity race at Circuit of the Americas. Your boy Connor Zilic was on the pole. He dominated stage 1. Everybody pits before the stage is over because nobody cares about stage points anymore. I hate it. I hate the flipping the stage strategy, the throwing away the points, the playoff points, the whole system. What do you think, Jim?
Well, I'm very opinionated about this. You know I don't like stage racing in general. It's okay on ovals. I mean, I don't really care that much then. But I think throwing the caution at the end of the stage on road courses has just ruined the racing. I think it forces the teams to make less than ideal strategy choices. So I would agree, I don't like the pitting before you need to. But when you're dealt a hand like that, you're forced to. Because if you stay out there, everyone else is going to pit, and you're going to have to restart in 30th. And I think that NASCAR needs to really take a look at maybe not throwing a caution at the end of the stage. You can still give stage points to whoever's leading at whatever lap you choose. But I really think that it takes a lot of the racing away, and it just makes it a spectacle.
One, it takes a lot of laps away too, because so everybody pits with 3 or 4 laps to go. The pits close with 2 laps to go. And then people pit, and then they've got some laps under caution, and you're wasting 4 or 5 laps of the next stage under caution before they get started. So on a road course, when you've got a 20 lap stage, they're really running 15, 16 laps for the second stage. It's silly. But anyway, Zilich, led everything in the first stage until he pitted. I don't even know who won the stage because it doesn't matter, because it was somebody who was probably in 33rd place. Zilich came into pit with, I believe, 4 laps to go. And somebody I've never heard of, who was only in the race because he was driving for somebody who had enough owner points to get him in the race, spun or stalled. And as Connor Zilich was coming into the pits, had already committed, was already on the entrance lane to pit road, the caution came out, which closed pit road. So Connor Zilich, your leader, got a penalty and had to restart 32nd for the second stage. This was a hard one. They showed the replay over and over and over and over, and every time I saw it, he couldn't have done anything different. He was committed to the pits. He was on the entrance road to pit road. He would have had to make a 90-degree turn, cross over the painted areas that they always tell you not to cross over, get back on the track. It's ridiculous. It's a penalty that shouldn't have happened. I'm sure you agree.
Don't even ask me. But I agree that by how NASCAR has written the rules, it is a penalty. I think that closing the pits on a road course when there's a caution for a car stalled somewhere, I don't agree with that. I think every other form of racing, you're on a road course, when there's a caution, everybody pits because it saves you time. But that's a whole different thing I won't get into.
So, anyhow, Jesse Love led the first half of the second stage. Riley Herbst led the second half of the stage. Stage 2, sorry. It was a really good battle up front. It was fun to watch. This was another good race. It was a good racing weekend. Connor Zilich moved himself from 32nd up to 7th before pitting to flip the stage. After everybody pitted, Zilich ended up restarting 3rd. Getting into turn 1, he's a little bit aggressive. I don't recall who was on the pole to start the stage. Zilich got into the back of him, pushed them wide, and Austin Hill just drove right by him, took the lead. Then, Zilich was a little aggressive again. Got to the inside of Corey Heim, tried to make the pass, and spun Heim. Zilich was able to keep going. I think he was a little aggressive. It was definitely not gentlemanly.
I don't have a problem with it. He put the car alongside. These cars, you can't turn them like you would any normal car. It takes a little bit extra space. Yeah, he came a little bit off the apex as they were exiting the corner. I think Corey Heim had time to avoid that. He definitely saw he was there. I think that Heim tried to keep the position, and that led to his spinning. I think it was good, clean, aggressive driving that ended in some incidental contact.
And could have ended Zilich's race because he got some damage in that right front.
That is true.
So, going down the straightaways, there's enough aero downforce on the car that it was causing a tire rub on Zilich's right front for the rest of the race. So we were just waiting for that right front tire to blow as he's driving up there towards the top. Austin Hill messed up, locked up the brakes, and Carson Quapple and Connor Zilich both got by. They had a great battle. Zilich, with his smoking right front, passed for the lead with about 9 laps to go and ended up winning the race. bummer for Quapple. He cut a tire with about 5 to go, running second. Nobody was gonna pass him, so it would have been a rookie 1-2 finish, which would have been cool to see. But he ended up losing that tire and losing second place.
Moving on to the first race of the IndyCar season. They were in St. Petersburg, Florida, on that street course there. It's, I believe, 1.8 miles, a real tight and short track. It was, overall, I thought it was kind of a boring race. You had the usual lap one chaos, just because it's the first race of the season. Everybody wants to make something happen, and it is a street course. You had a 3-car crash in turn 3 of the first lap that took out Siegel, Power, and Louis Foster. And so that was unfortunate, especially for Louis Foster, being his first race. Welcome to IndyCar. You got three turns into your first lap.
Yeah, I know it's probably not a popular thing to say. I really like the IndyCars on ovals. I'm not a street circuit fan for anything really. I know everybody thinks that IndyCar should be more and more like Formula One. I just prefer the IndyCars on the ovals over the road course and obviously over the street circuits. But
Luckily, after that first lap caution, the rest of the race went caution free. So that was nice to see at least. Marcus Armstrong, he led some laps and then he had a mechanical issue. We weren't really sure what. It looked like one of his tires was loose, and there was some speculation that maybe he brushed the wall, but we never saw anything conclusive on that. But he did have to retire the car. Alex Palou and Joseph Newgarden, they had a decent battle with about 10 to go for the lead. Palou was leading and he had caught some lap traffic. Newgarden caught up and he was putting on a good fight to try to get the win. But unfortunately, he was a little short on fuel. On the last lap, he did run out right after being passed by Scott Dixon. So Palou ended up winning with Dixon second and Newgarden coasting to the line in third.
well, at least we get a top 3 out of my boy Joseph. On to Sunday, NASCAR at Circuit of the Americas. Tyler Reddick on the pole. And the typical 5 wide into turn 1 chaos. Chase Elliott got spun by Ross Chastain, just not using his watermelon head. Not a big wreck. Connor Zilic and Denny Hamlin both had some damage. Elliott spun and ended up, way behind in last place. Shane Van Gisbergen took the lead around lap 9 and led until the stage flipping stuff went on. And Van Gisbergen and Kyle Busch, they put on a show in the second stage. They were just running. They ran away. Busch led some. SVG led some. It was some darn good road race, and it was nice to see that out of Kyle. He was having himself a great day there. Kyle Larson's pit crew. You don't see stuff like this happen from a Hendrick pit crew, and you don't see stuff like this happen from Kyle Larson's pit crew, but they killed his race. They couldn't get the right rear wheel off. They finally got the right rear wheel off, and apparently they decided they didn't have to do anything else other than that right rear wheel. Sorry, the left rear, not the right rear. They didn't put the right front lug nut on. And
the one lug nut.
Yeah, with these cars with one lug nut. Okay, yeah. So Larson went out on track and lost a wheel. So he lost a lap driving back to the pits on 3 tires, sorry. And then, of course, was penalized by NASCAR. So he was down 2 laps. So his race was pretty much done. At the end of the stage, McDowell did not pit. Tried some alternate strategy. He wasn't having the best race. It did help him out. Flipped him up about 20 spots. Kyle Busch took the lead away from him right away, like taking candy from a baby. Busch was leading for quite a while there. He, like I said, had a great race going on. Daniel Suarez ran out of talent. He jumped the curb all by himself, spun, ended up taking out Zilich. 3-4 cars drove by, and Zilich was way far to the right off the track, and that's just where Suarez drove to and took them both out of the race. Kyle Busch was the car to beat, though. He had about a 3-second lead with 17 laps to go, and then Denny Hamlin pulled some kamikaze move. I don't know what he was thinking, if he was taking a nap and just forgot to hit the brakes, and then all of a sudden he locked up the brakes and punted Austin Dillon. Dillon got stuck in the gravel, and since there's a car stuck in the gravel that can't go anywhere, they had to throw the yellow, which erased Kyle Busch's lead. They restarted with about 14 to go. Great race. Kyle Busch, Christopher Bell, Byron, Tyler Reddick. It was a fun 4-car battle up there. Busch finally ended up. I think he just burnt his tires up trying to hang on to the lead. He was driving hard, making the car as wide as he could, and just is like a switch turned off, and he had nothing left. So he used it up, fell back a little bit. Christopher Bell won, so that's his second race in a row. He won at Atlanta last week, and then at Circuit of the Americas, so 2 completely different tracks, which we always knew the Dirt Boy could drive anywhere. And I have to say, it was a great recovery for Chase Elliott. He, if you'll recall, spun on lap 1 by Ross Chastain and drove himself back up to 4th. So it was a good NASCAR race on the road course in Texas.
That's the end of the racing action for the week. But I do have an update on the FIA and specifically Mohammed controversy.
Mohammed's got to go.
With the
and we need a hashtag Mohammed's got to go.
So over in the WRC, the rally world, a couple weeks ago, Adrien Fourmeau, a French rally driver, he was fined 30,000 euros after stage 18 of Rally Sweden. They interviewed him right afterwards. He had made a mistake. He forgot to tighten his helmet or something. And he said he messed up, except he used a word that Mohammed doesn't like instead to describe how he messed up. So they fined him the 30,000 euros. In response to that, WRC has written a letter to the FIA, which I'm going to read now because I think that it was a well-written letter, and they haven't received a response yet. We'll update you if they do, which I doubt.
Mohammed's not going to answer to anybody.
But the letter states, the rally drivers and co-drivers of the WRC, inspired by their GPDA colleagues, joined together to express their opinion, seek clarity, and cooperate towards a brighter future. First and foremost, we wish to state that, as is the case with every sport, competitors must abide by the referee's decisions. The respect of this principle is not in question. We are not all full-time professionals, yet we all face the same extreme conditions with the same relentless passion. Whether navigating through dense forest, across frozen roads in the dead of night, or through the dust of treacherous gravel tracks, we push ourselves to the limit, against the elements, against the clock, and against their own limits. Beyond racing, our role has expanded. Today, rally drivers and co-drivers are not only athletes, but also entertainers, content creators, and constant media figures. From the smartphones of spectators to the official WRC cameras, we are expected to be available at all times, before, during, and after competition, from dawn until dusk. The World Rally Association has always recognized our responsibilities and commitment to collaborate in a constructive way with all stakeholders, including the FIA president, in order to promote and elevate our outstanding sport for the benefit of all. In recent months, however, there has been an alarming increase in the severity of sanctions imposed for minor, isolated, and unintentional language lapses. This has reached an unacceptable level. We strongly believe that common colloquialism cannot be considered and judged as equal to genuine insult or act of aggression. Non-mother tongue speakers may use or repeat terms without full awareness of their meaning and connotation. Seconds after an extreme adrenaline spike, it is unrealistic to expect a perfect and systematic control over emotions. Rally is extreme. Risk level for the athletes, intensity of the focus, length of the days, all the limits are reached. In such a case, we question the relevance and validity of imposing any sort of penalty. Moreover, the exorbitant fines are vastly disproportionate to the average income and budget in rallying. We are also concerned with the public impression these excessive sums create in the minds of the fans, suggesting this is an industry where money doesn't matter. This also raises a fundamental question. Where does the money from these fines go? The lack of transparency only amplifies concerns and undermines confidence in the system. Surely the negative impressions surrounding these penalties far outweigh the impact of any language lapse. We call for direct communication and engagement between the FIA president and World Rally members to find a mutually agreeable and urgent solution. What do you think of that?
Well written. I would hope that the first fine that comes down in Formula One, they will have a similar letter written, and every other racing series that the FIA is in charge of also writes the same letter, and Muhammad's got to go. He's in a meeting, was it 2 weeks ago? No, before the meeting was held 2 weeks ago, he suspended 2 members of the FIA. No reason was given. There is speculation that it's because it is rumored that they are going to be challenging him in the run for re-election in December. So he has suspended them. I'm sure the money's just going into Muhammad's pocket. My opinion, that is. It's not him, so if you're going to send somebody over to kill me, that's me. Jim over there didn't say that, but I have no use for the guy. He's trying to destroy all forms of motorsport across the world that he can touch, and that is my opinion.
I think I'll just leave it at the letter because that was said perfectly, I think.
All right. That's all we've got today then. Next week we'll have... What do we have next week? We'll have Jim's Formula One preview. Long awaited. He's been working on it for months, so it'll probably be a longer show next week. We've got NASCAR and Xfinity at Phoenix. And then we've got Supercross at Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis. And anything else that happens to pop up, we'll talk about. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.